I'd been pushing the miles, chewing up the highway across Wyoming in the middle of the night when my bladder finally forced the issue. I tried telling myself I'd wait until Cheyenne, wait until the next big truck plaza, but the exit signs rolled past empty and dark, and the road stretched on and on. Finally, a faded blue board promised this rest area 2 miles ahead. I didn't think twice, as I couldn't afford to. The lot was half covered in ice. Snow drifted in uneven piles against the concrete barriers. My headlights caught just 2 other vehicles, a beat-up sedan under the far lamp, and also what looked like an abandoned RV parked at this angle. Frost covering the windows, no other rigs, no other drivers. I pulled my Peterbilt into the slot closest to the building and killed the engine. I figured I'd stop for a few hours. The quiet after the diesel rattle was loud enough to make me uncomfortable, though. Just the tick of the cooling metal and the Wyoming wind skimming over the plains. The rest area itself was ugly. Center block construction, yellow lights buzzing under steel cages. That kind of place that looks exactly the same whether it's 1970 or 2025. I got out and crunched the ice as I walked in. Zipper already halfway down, ready to piss and relax, at least for a little bit. Inside it was warmer, but not much better. The air smelled like wet plaster and disinfectant. Something sour in the distance, too. The lights hummed overhead. The place was lit, but abandoned is really the word that came to mind. The brochure racks by the door still had that glossy map in them, but the paper was curled and sun-faded. Some posters on the walls advertised events that had passed years before. The bathrooms were down this short tiled hallway. Half the fixtures were tagged with out-of-order signs, the paper peeling and very brittle. I took the far urinal, sighing and grateful for the relief. Finally, when I finished and zipped up, I quickly realized that I wasn't alone anymore. I glanced over and saw a man stood at the sink. He hadn't been there when I walked in. I was sure of that. He was really tall with his trucker cap pulled down in a gray mustache. His jacket was denim, far too thin for this kind of weather. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets. He wasn't moving. He wasn't washing up. He didn't even look like he was about to. He was just standing there watching me in the mirror. "A hell of a night," he finally said with a thick southern drawl. "Yeah," I muttered, giving him a quick nod and stepping toward the door. "Now, you think that should have been it? Passing words between truckers and drifters, whoever. People come and go in places like this without really sticking." But he turned from the mirror, half blocking the hall, and smiled at me, and his teeth were almost gray at the edges. "It's cold out there," he said. "Bet you've been driving for a long time, huh?" This time I didn't answer. I just kept moving. My boots were now echoing in the tile. He shifted aside like he was letting me through, but the way he did it made me feel like I was being herded instead of helped. When I stepped back out into the lobby, I realized the sedan that had been outside was now parked right up against my rig. The RV's door was open, and a shape was setting just inside the shadows. The vending machines in the corner were buzzing, all lit up and full. Candy bars, chips, bottle of soda, but the labels were wrong and faded. I squinted and saw a few expiration dates. 2006, 2007. Everything inside it was years and years old, yet the machines hum like they've been stocked yesterday. The man from the bathroom stepped out behind me, the heavy door slamming shut. Another figure stood near the brochure rack now, hood up, looking the other way. That was when I understood the situation. This wasn't a stop anymore. Not for travelers anyway. I froze in place, hard banging in my chest, trying to process what I was really seeing. The vending machines buzzing, the expired food, the shadowy figures suddenly filling up the empty lobby. My instincts were screaming at me to get back to my rig, put Wyoming quickly in my rear view, but the guy with the mustache was between me and the door now. He leaned against the wall like he owned the place, and I guess maybe he did. "You headed east?" he asked me. Yeah," I said. He grinned at me again. The hooded figure by the brochure rack shifted closer now, and my gut turned over. The RV outside was not abandoned. Neither was that sedan. This wasn't any kind of coincidence. They've been here waiting like spiders in a web. And I was the goddamn fly. "I got a buddy out in the road," Mustache said, tapping his chest pocket as if it was some kind of proof. "Needs a ride. You mind helping out a fellow traveler?" I shook my head at him. No, I don't pick up passengers. He smiled and then twitched just for a second, then smoothed back into something more empty. That's so the hooded one spoke for the first time, voice almost childlike. It's got a good rig, big tank, a lot of room. My stomach nodded. That was when I realized what this was. Not ghosts or some kind of haunting, but something worse. People. Real people who turned this forgotten building into their own trap. Predators who watched the endless flow on the highway, picked off the ones too tired, too careless to keep driving. I needed to get out. I shifted, keeping my voice level. Listen, I'm not looking for any trouble. I just came in to use the bathroom. That's it. Mustache chuckled softly, shaking his head. Yeah, everybody says that. Then they stay. He then took a step toward me, hooded figure mirrored it. The door was 6 feet away, but it might as well have been 60. The bathroom door swung open again, and another man came out, younger, wiry, his eyes jittering like he swallowed a whole mouthful of speed. He rubbed his hands together and grinned wide, teeth cracked and yellow. Got us a driver, he said like he'd been waiting all night for this moment. I didn't think anymore. I just moved. I went for the door hard and shouldering past Mustache. He was actually fast, but desperation is faster. My elbow caught him in the ribs and he grunted, grabbing from my jacket. I tore loose and hit the push bar. My rig was right there, 10 yards away, but the sedan's door now flew open, and 2 more men spilled out. One with the bat, the other that looked like something the length of a pipe. I couldn't believe it. For a heartbeat, I froze again. If I ran, they'd catch me in the open. If I fought, I'd lose. So I did the only thing I could. I lied. The cops are already on their way, I shouted, my voice tearing out loud enough to echo. They got my GPS ping. They'll be here in 5. Obviously, dispatch didn't track me like that, but the effect was instant. The 2 by the sedan now slowed and exchanged a look. The hooded figure hesitated in the doorway. Even Mustache faltered, his hands hovering over that mid-grab. It bought me a few more seconds, and 2 seconds was enough. I sprinted, boots slipping on the ice, lungs burning with the shock of the cold. My world narrowed to the steps itself, the latch, the blessed slam on my cab door locking behind me as I slammed it. I jammed the key into the ignition and began the startup process. After a minute, my Peterbilt roared to life, engine shuddering like it knew what was at stake. Then they moved all at once. Mustache then slammed his hand against the driver's side window. The wiry kid pounded on the door with both fists, shrieking like some kind of mad dog. The 2 from the sedan circled wide, one going from the passenger side, the other darting from my trailer. The others were crawling onto the back of the trailer or on the sides of the truck. Some of them had pipes, wrenches, and some with just empty hands. I threw it into gear, tires spinning on the ice, screaming. For a terrifying second, I thought I'd slide. Thought the weight of the load would pin me in place. But then the traction caught and the rig lurched forward, gliding me into safety. I didn't look back, and it didn't really matter. In the side mirror, I caught a glimpse anyway. The whole group, 6, maybe 7 of them now standing in the halo of the yellow light watching me drive off. No chase, no screaming, just watching me head down the road. I felt sick in that moment. I worried for whoever would pull in next. After a few minutes, the road swallowed me back up, black top glistening under the moonlight. My hands were still shaking on the wheel, adrenaline making the lines blur together. I kept expecting to see headlights rise behind me, that beat-up sedan gunning to catch up, but the miles continued to stretch empty. I got on the CB and warned everybody else that I could reach over the airway. Everybody thanked me for the message, and a few even mentioned that rest stop had a history of criminal violence. My next stop was the closest police station in the next town over. I made my report. They dispatched a couple of deputies, and the world kept spinning. I like to think that I prevented some kind of mischief that day, maybe even landed those, hopefully behind bars. Story 2. Truckers will run some stretches of highway 100 times over, enough to picture every single mile marker in their sleep. That's how Montana, Minnesota, and Nodak were for me. 2-lane black top carved through snowfields, the mountains hulking black on either side like walls, and then just utterly flat roads you have to respect or they'll kill you. Icy grades, blind turns, wide-out squalls that could roll in without any kind of warning. And on this night, it was one of those times. temperature hovering near zero. The sky so dark that it felt solid. My rig's headlights cut tunnels through the snow, flakes hammering down in waves. The CV was quiet, dead air, and It's usually like that after midnight. I'd just taken a sip of lukewarm coffee when the speaker hissed, cracked, and a voice came through. Breaker 19 for the southbound Pete. You copy? It jolted me up clear as day, like the guy was sitting right beside me. But it wasn't the clarity that froze me. It was the voice. I knew it. Hell, I knew it better than I wanted to. It was Earl. Earl had been a friend of mine, another driver. We shared runs, swapped meals, killed long hours on the radio talking about everything from bad marriages to old records. A guy who felt like family on the road. The problem was Earl was dead. He'd gone off the road on this very stretch 5 years back. They pulled him and his Freightliner out of the ravine. Twisted steel and glass scattered down the slope. A true death sentence. I'd gone to his funeral, stood with his widow, seen the casket go into the ground. So hearing his voice now, calm and easy, like nothing had happened, my throat tightened up until I couldn't breathe. You out there, brother? The radio crackled again. I've been trying to reach you. I think I'm lost. I gripped my mic, but didn't key it. My knuckles felt locked in place. Okay, maybe it was some other driver, somebody with that same tone, that same inflection. Coincidences happen, right? But then the voice said, Bill, I saw you drive by me. I know your truck. You there? I started to sweat and considered pulling over. I pressed the mic. Who is this? Static swallowed my cab, a roll of hiss that made the hair on my arm stand straight up. Verrill laughed. The same laugh that I'd heard 100 times over. The same one I thought I'd never hear again. You know damn well who this is. Now talk to me. The snow thickened, hammered against the windshield in horizontal sheets. My wipers groaned, fighting to keep the view clear, but I barely saw the road anymore, and my ears were tuned to the radio. You still out there, buddy? The voice asked again. Earl's voice undeniable. I keyed the mic throat tight. Earl's dead. Been dead 5 years. Whoever this is, cut the... It ain't funny. There was a pause, then static and the thrum of my tires. And then remember that time outside? You locked your keys in the cab. Damn near froze your balls off till I showed up with that coat hanger. My chest went cold, my jaw clenched. The night had been 20 below. My hands were going numb. And Earl had laughed at me while fishing around with the Ben hanger until the lock popped. No one else had been there. It was a story that we told. Sure. But who out there would know what to tell to me now? All right. Who is this? Seriously, I snapped. I told you it's me. Help me get back on the road, man. I shivered, then walked my spine. I slammed the mic back into its hook and muttered to myself. Okay, it's a trick. With a scanner or take the next exit. Earl's voice cut through the speaker. Bogs rolling in up ahead. Wreck waiting on the other side. You go straight, you won't make it. You'll run right into it all. I swallowed. My eyes darted to the GPS. Nothing about a wreck, nothing about fog, just an endless line of highway through the whiteout. But then, almost like he conjured it up, the road ahead blurred into a gray haze. My headlights hit a wall of fog so thick it looked like concrete. My stomach dropped. Exit's coming in 1 mile, Earl said. Just trust me, brother. I gripped the wheel and took a breath. The exit sign loomed out of the white, big and green. I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe in God back then, but I remember the notion of guardian angels running through my head as I drove. If I stayed straight, maybe I hit fog. Maybe I hit a wreckage. If I took the exit, I left the safety of the known road for some god-forsaken country lane in the middle of nowhere. Behind me, the CB hissed with laughter, though. Against every instinct, I eased onto the off-ramp. I heard the wheels crunch over the packed ice. My headlights caught bare trees, fields buried under snow, the fog closed behind me, swallowing in the interstate hole. Good, now just keep her upright, Earl said. The mirror showed nothing but black and snow. No taillights, no oncoming traffic, just me and this voice. Where's this road go? I asked. You'll see. Miles crawled by, the lane narrowed, no markings, just white stretches broken by sagging fence posts. I'd driven a lot of back roads in my career, but this one really felt wrong. And there were shadows crawling on the edges of the road. You remember that diner in Billings? Earl asked suddenly. The one with the waitress with the bad wig. You and me sat in the corner booth 3 in the morning talking about how we die out here someday. My throat closed. He wasn't wrong. We joked about it more than once. How the road would claim us both sooner or later. Heart attack, accident, weather. There's something around every single bend. How the hell is this happening? I asked him. The silence stretched on. Then his voice returned, but he sounded distorted now. I'm gone. You think there's only one road? There's the side just under the... My grip slipped on the wheel. The snow wasn't just snow anymore. It glittered oddly in my high beams, shapes flickering at the edges. The road felt narrower now, tilting and pulling me forward like it was dragging me somewhere else. I'm losing it. You didn't have to, Earl said. Just let go. My skin crawled. The CB squealed high-pitched. I turned the volume down, but Earl's voice cut through anyway. Louder now, quickly filling up the cab. I yanked the power cable, but it didn't do anything. Just pull over, brother. Let me in. Up ahead, the road curved hard right, but in the haze, I could swear it didn't stop. It just kept going straight into the fog. There was a man stood on the shoulder. It missed the amorphous shadows, and a hand raised into the air. My truck shuddered, engine straining, though my foot was steady. The inside of my truck smelled like ozone. I ain't going with you, I said, and you weren't coming with me. Stop the truck, Bill. It didn't sound like my friend anymore. The headlights hit the curb, my muscles locked for a split second, and I swore the wheel turned on its own. The truck fought me like a living thing, wheel jerking toward a pale road that shouldn't have been there. My shoulders screamed as I yanked back, tire shrieking, cab tilting. For a heartbeat, I thought I was going to roll it. Then the rig caught, straightened, and I slammed through the curve onto a real highway, snow blasting the windshield, making me blind for a brief moment. That phantom lane vanished. Behind me, the CB howled, static breaking in Earl's voice again, ragging and furious now. You'll see me again, brother. We ain't outrunning this. Everything went dark in the cabin. The dash, the CB, even the headlights blacked out. And when it came back on, it was total silence. I didn't stop. I didn't even blink. I pushed my P until the attack flirted with a red. The whiteout cleared in patches, signs for Helena flashing by, civilization beckoning me onward. At dawn, I finally pulled into a crowded truck plaza, headlights bouncing off rows of parked rigs. And I sat there shaking, hands welded to my wheel, watching normal men climb down from their cabs, stretch, and light up cigarettes. None of them look haunted. None of them look like they just spoken with the dead. I imagined it maybe stress the snow, I don't know. A trick of a memory and a voice, but when I checked the GPS log later, my gut quickly turned. It showed that I did indeed leave the interstate for exactly 7 mi. The road wasn't named, just this gray line that ended in a blank space before looping back to the highway. I didn't bother asking anybody, just used the facilities, got a bite to eat, and got a little bit of shut-yay. I figured the rest was really needed. Hallucinating on the road isn't unheard of. If you're listening to my story, I honestly don't really know what happened to me that night, but it's never happened again since. The only evidence of it is the weird little detour that I took from the highway. And even then, I wonder if maybe I was sleep driving for a little bit or something, because I still don't believe in ghosts or any kind of devils. Story 3, picture of dark highway. Nothing but my headlights cutting through the Nevada desert. Then bam, out of nowhere, she's right there at the shoulder, thumb out, backpack at her feet, almost making me swerve. My first thought wasn't to help her. It was Jesus Christ, don't wreck the load. I eased off the throttle, heart still thumping. Who the hell hitchhikes out here? Middle of nowhere, 20 mi between exits. No gas stations, no nothing. Inches off the road, thumb in the lane. Talk about an urge for some kind of suicide. She looked really young, maybe in her early 20s, pale face under a hoodie, jeans, and she didn't wave like she was desperate, just stood there, eyes fixed on me, still as a scarecrow. Against every natural instinct, I found myself pulling over, the brake hiss echoing, trailer lights glowing red in an empty dark. She jogged up to the cab and leaned on the step. Is this for real? Her voice was full of adrenaline. Yeah, I said, and I unlocked the passenger door. She climbed in and tossed the pack between her knees, a faint smell of sweat and cigarettes. Appreciate it, she said as she buckled in. Yeah, no problem. We rode for a while in silence at first. The only sound was the hum of my tires. I kept sneaking looks over at her. She didn't seem jittery like most hitchhikers I'd seen be. She wasn't shivering, wasn't nervous, just calm. Honestly, she was quite the sight. So, you from around here? Or I asked finally. She shook her head. No, just passing through, trying to get somewhere. Where to? Doesn't matter, she said it flat. There are better things to talk about. That response kind of stuck in my head. Didn't matter. Out here, everything matters. Where you were going, how many miles to fuel, whether he had enough water or not. Nothing about this stretch was casual. And to be hitching out here, hell, it could take you days to get anywhere. After a while, she turned over to me. You got family? That kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah, I said. Why? She just smiled. Just asking. You get to see them a lot? Driving and all. Oh yeah. Few days on, few days off. It's a pretty good life. Her eyes then drifted down to the console, lingering on my dispatch tablet, the mess of receipts, the dented thermos. She seemed to be scanning everything, cataloging it. I felt my chest flutter a little. She wasn't just making small talk. She was studying me. When we stopped at the next truck turnout, I killed the engine. She didn't move, just sat there, tapping her fingers against her knee. When I reached for my wallet to go grab a bill for a soda, I noticed it was no longer in the dash tray. My stomach dropped. Her pack was zipped, sitting neatly between her legs, and she was smiling. My wallet didn't move. I always sat it in that exact same place for days on end. I looked over at her. She sat calm, his eyes tapping her finger against her knee. Still. Lose something? She asked me. The way she said that just made my face flush. Was this dumb kid serious? I forced the shrug and tried to keep my voice even. Yeah, my wallet. She smiled like she'd been waiting for that response. Well, maybe you should keep better track of it. I stared at her pack and she didn't flinch. Didn't even shift her legs. Just let me know without words that she was not going to unzip it. You got kids? She asked me out of nowhere again. Yeah, why? Just wondering. She leaned back in her seat like we were on some kind of Sunday drive now. You calling much on the road check in, or do they just wait and wonder where you are? I gripped the wheel tighter. You planning on giving me my wallet back? She tilted her head, thought it over. Maybe. Depends on how this goes. Every hair on my arm stood up. Then this wasn't a hitchhiker looking for a safe ride. This was something else, blackmail or something I didn't want any part of. I tried the radio static crackling, but there wasn't another trucker for miles. Desert at night swallows everything up. You pick a lot of people up, she asked me. No, almost never. Good choice, she said. People out here, you don't know what they want. Could be a murderer. Now that made my skin crawl. The next truck stop was 15 miles ahead. I decided I'd pull in, hit the lights, and walk inside. She could sit there with my wallet and rot for all I cared. But when the neon glow finally showed, she shifted in her seat. Don't stop here. My jaw clenched. What? Keep going. Her voice was firm. Don't stop till the next one. Why? Because I'm a debtor here. I slowed anyway. Blinkers clicking, the diner lights glowed yellow, semis lined up in the lot, drivers coming and going. Safe, normal, exactly where I wanted to be. Her hand shot out, fingers wrapping around my forearm, nails biting into my skin. I said, keep driving or I'll pull the surprise out of my bag. I'll give you a hint. It goes bang. I looked in her eyes, flat, certain like she wasn't bluffing, and froze me more than that grip. I owe somebody here, she repeated. If you pull in, we aren't leaving. I ripped my arm free. I eased the wheel, bypassing the exit, staying on the black top. The truck stopped, slid past to my mirrors. I thought I saw a sedan pull out behind us, but the taillights vanished into the dark. Good, she said, settling back in. Smart man. I felt my stomach turn over again. This girl had me boxed. If I pulled off, maybe I got jumped. If I kept rolling, I was at her mercy. There's not really any winning here. Not yet, anyway. The desert stretched on empty for another 30 Ms. She didn't talk, just sat there watching me. Finally, she leaned forward. Okay, you got a choice. You can keep driving, and when I tell you, you'll pull over, or you can try something stupid, and we'll both probably regret it. I laughed. I don't really know why. Okay, what do you want here? Money? The load? What is it? She didn't answer me right away. Then she said, it's not really what I want, it's what they want. And they're waiting, man. It's showtime. The next exit came up unmarked, a dirt road vanishing into scrub land. Right here, she said like she was giving me GPS directions. My hand shook on the wheel. My wallet was in her bag and she was in my damn rig. And whoever they were, she believed in them enough to risk everything. I slowed, trailer groaning as I took the ramp. Dust kicked up in my headlight. No building, no gas station, just black desert and the faint shape of headlights ahead, parked sideways across the road like some kind of barricade. My heart slammed up against my ribs. I glanced over at her, and she was smiling ear to ear. The headlights ahead stayed still, blocking the dirt road. A low sedan, silhouettes moving inside. "You're gonna stop," she said, voice calm as ever. "You'll shut the engine down. Then we'll all have a nice little talk." I gripped the wheel so hard that my hands began to cramp. Out here, nobody would hear me if I screamed. Nobody would find me until buzzards circled overhead. I slowed just enough to make it look like I was listening to her. Her face lit up. She thought she had me, and maybe she did. Time will tell. When we were 50 yards out, I jammed the throttle. The truck roared, trailer shuddering. Her smile cracked into shock as the rig surged forward, dirt and dust blasting out in two plumes. The sedan's headlight jerked as the driver panicked trying to reverse, but it was too late. I yanked the wheel, trailer fishtailing. Metal screamed as I clipped her bumper and sent the car spinning into the ditch. My cab shuddered, but I kept it upright, tires clawing at the dirt until we bounced back onto the road. She screamed at me then, high and furious, losing her mind. She clawed at her pack, trying to unzip it. I didn't care what was in there now, gun or not. I grabbed her by the hoodie, wretched the driver's door open at 60. The wind howled, sucking her curses off into the dark. Out of my truck. I pulled her right out to the side like a sack of potatoes. She hit the ground in a blur of limbs and black fabric tumbling into the sand. And then she was gone, swallowed by dust and shadows. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I drove until dawn, throat raw, bleeding from where her nails had dug in at the next real truck stop. I sat in the lot and finally looked at the cab. My wallet was back on the dash, right where I left it. Surprisingly, nothing was missing. Like, she never touched it. It was weird as hell, but it wasn't enough to keep me from calling the cops. The sheriff's department was on scene within 25 minutes that had the girl and a pair of guys arrested within a few hours. They were booked and had a colorful future ahead of them. Yeah, you can probably guess this, but I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. I don't care if it's snowing. I don't care if it's a kid or even a grandmother. I'm not stopping. Story 4. It was really supposed to be a pretty easy haul. Quick money, light paperwork, nothing too complicated. The dispatcher pitched it like it was a gift. One reefer trailer, pick up outside of Denver, drop at South Albuquerque, no stops, no questions, big payout on delivery. And honestly, I should have thought about it because that should have been the first red flag. Not many contracts come through that actually benefit the driver. The lot where I hooked up the trailer was really quiet. No other rigs moving, no forklifts buzzing, just one single guy in a cart jacket smoking in the cold. His breath mixing in with the exhaust from that reefer unit that was already running. He didn't even shake my hand. Didn't give me his name. Just slid the paperwork across the clipboard and said, "Don't open it. Keep it running. Drop it at the address. They'll take care of the rest." His eyes lingered on for a little too long, like he wanted to say more, but thought better of it in the moment. The trailer was locked with this really heavy padlock. I walked around it, slapped the aluminum side. Cold air hissed from the vents, the unit growling steadily. A normal reefer hum, but a little louder. Working overtime, it seemed like I asked what I was carrying. He said meat, frozen stuff. I'd hauled frozen beef before, pork too. Nothing really special about it. The first 100 miles were uneventful. Midnight highway, mountains fading behind me, a flat desert opening up ahead. But as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong about this load. The Reaper cycled high every 20 minutes, roaring loud enough to rattle the mirrors. Normally in that weather, the outside temp was below freezing. The unit should have barely kicked on at all. At my second fuel stop, I checked it again. The lock was still intact, but the metal door felt warmer than it actually should have been. When I climbed back into the cab, a state trooper pulled in behind me, grabbing a coffee from the mini-mart. For a moment, I thought about saying something, telling him, just saying I had a bad feeling, letting him take a look. But I didn't do it because if it was really just me, I'd look like a paranoid idiot. And if I wasn't, well, I'm sure I didn't want to know. So I drove on. 3 hours into the desert, the banging started. It was faint at first, just a dull thud like the trailer hitting a pothole. But it came again, louder, rhythmic, a fist on the inside of the steel. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. And that banging did not stop. Every few miles another thud, sometimes sharp, sometimes soft and rapid. I kept telling myself, okay, the cargo might have been stacked wrong, something, a pallet sliding on the ice, but I'd hold enough loads to know better. At the next turnout, I pulled over, flashers cutting through the dark, snow-dusted the desert scrub, wind kicking grit across the blacktop. My breath came out in clouds as I walked the length of the trailer, flashlight beam jittering in my shaking hand. The unit was screaming like it was running full tilt just to break even, the metal door now vibrating beneath my palm. That padlock held steady, though, but I could see scratches near the latch. Fresh ones. Something or someone had been clawing at it from the inside. My stomach then turned to stone. I thought about calling dispatch, but what would I even say? Hey, your frozen beef's knocking on the door. They'd hang up on me and blacklist me. Another thud rattled the door so hard that I watched the padlock jump. Holy, I muttered. This is all above my pay grade. I climbed into the cab and slammed the locks down and floored it back onto the highway. Maybe if I just kept moving, ignoring it, I could make it to Albuquerque, drop the trailer, and just be done. That was the deal, right? Don't ask questions, don't look. But every mile, I heard it. 2 hours later, my nerves were shot. I pulled into an abandoned way station just outside of Santa Rosa, that kind with busted scales and graffiti scrawling across the brick. Dead quiet, except for the hiss of the wind around me. Shut the engine down, sat there staring into the mirrors, sweat soaking my shirt even in the cold. That's when I heard muffled voices, weak, but I definitely heard it. They were calling out for help. That was it. No more pretending this wasn't cargo. My hands shook as I dug a crowbar from the side box. I circled to the back, everything screaming at me to leave it locked, to finish the haul, to forget it, but I couldn't do that. I jammed the crowbar under the padlock and pried till my arms screamed. Metal groaning, it finally popped with a crack and the hasp bent. The door swung open. Cold vapor billowed out, stinking of ammonia and rot. My light cut through the fog and landed on shapes crammed inside. Not boxes, not me. People. 6 of them huddled together under thin blankets, eyes wide and glassy, skin blue from the cold. Their breath was rising up in these weak clouds. One man, I think in his 40s, staggered forward and nearly fell out of the trailer. Peace, he rasped out. Can't breathe. They weren't just freezing. The reefer had been running too hard, choking them with fumes. I gagged. Bile burned up my throat. I hauled the man out and lowered him onto the asphalt. His body was stiff and shaking violently. Behind him, the others were moaning too weak to move. I realized then in this sick twist, if I hadn't stopped, if I'd driven all the way to Albuquerque without opening up that door, half of them would have easily been dead by morning. Maybe that was the point. Who the hell locked you in here? I asked, but the man just shook his head, eyes rolling back. He didn't know or didn't want to say. I called 911 with numb fingers, spitting words into the phone. I'm a truck driver. I just found people locked in my reefer trailer. They're freezing to death. Mile marker 268, Old Way Station. The dispatcher's voice was calm and said help was on the way. 10, maybe 15 minutes. But in the distance, headlights bloomed ahead. Not one set, 2, 3 vehicles pulling in the frontage road, closing in fast. My blood went cold. Whoever had loaded these people in, they obviously weren't done with me. I sprinted back to the cab. The man on the ground wheezed, reaching up weakly, but I couldn't stay. If I did, we'd all be dead. The engines behind me grew louder, SUVs, maybe another pickup. I saw shadows moving inside. I fired up the rig, gears screaming as I wrenched back onto the road. The trailer swayed, its doors hanging open, cold fog streaming out behind me like smoke. And in the mirror, the headlights roared closer. I floored it, hands locked white on the wheel. My radio stayed dead silent. No chatter, no calls for help. Just me hauling a stolen load of half-dead people, chased through the desert by the very men who had put them there. I pushed that rig harder than I ever had in my life, the trailer slamming and rattling behind me, the reefer misting. In the mirrors, I caught headlights closing the gap, weaving across both lanes like wolves cutting at angles. I knew if they boxed me in out here, I was done for. No way in hell I was stopping on some desert shoulder for whoever the hell they were. Up ahead, I caught this green glow, an exit sign. State Highway 84, small town 15 mi off. If I could just get close enough to people, to noise, to lights, maybe they back off me. I took that ramp hot. Trailer brakes free, tires chugging, but the SUV stayed on me. One of them swung wide, trying to get alongside, but I edged him into the gravel shoulder until he finally backed off. The reverb banged again, doors clattering. I was thankful that I got everybody out before the chase started. The town's lights appeared faint on the horizon. Gas stations, a strip of motel, the glow of a 24-hour diner. Civilization. As soon as I hit the edge of town, I yanked the air horn. Didn't let up. That blast would rip through the quiet streets. People turned, porch lights flicked on. A county cruiser sitting at a gas station whipped out onto the road. Cherries lighting up. The SUVs peeled off like spooked dogs, disappearing back into the dark. I pulled the truck into the diner lot and killed the brakes, my heart jackhammering. The deputy had barely enough time to ask what the hell was going on before I was dragging him to the trailer, pointing at the blankets and clothing inside. Within 20 minutes or so, the place was swarming. Ambulances, more cruisers, EMTs pulling people out wrapped in blankets. My rig sat there idling, reefer still howling until one of the police officers cut it off. There was actually still a few people stuffed in the back, totally como mouse. They hit me with 100 questions, but I didn't have many answers for them. Who gave me the load? Where was this supposed to go? Why didn't I call sooner? All I could do was tell them the truth. I took the job. I didn't ask questions, and I almost became an accessory to murder. Now, I never really truly learned who they were. I was told it was illegals, the whole thing was some kind of bizarre coyote operation, but I don't know if I really believe that. I don't have the evidence either way, but something about the official story just doesn't make sense to me. But again, I guess I don't really ask